And this, when you go to make a record, and you all move in, and your band that's been around as long as us, you all move into this big studio, and you've got road crew, and you've got the clock ticking because you're renting this studio, and there's a kind of pressure to get to work and to make it work and make it work fast. And Vapor Trails took so long, and it was so intense, that whole session, 14 months all told by the time we finished it. I didn't want us to go into the same environment. I felt it was really important that the environment began in a totally different way, fresh and new and relaxed. So we talked, and that was when we decided, okay, let's start in the basement, just you and me. If we need something fixed on the guitars, we'll fix it. If we need to plug something in, you'll do it. So we had a blast, and he would just come over, we'd have a coffee, we'd go downstairs, and no electric guitars, because the acoustics were easy on the ears.
Yeah.
And if you play a song, if you write a good chord progression on an acoustic and a good melody against acoustic, it's forever.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that you can't hide behind anything. You can't be fooled on an acoustic guitar. An electric guitar you can be, because you've got the power, you've got the sustain, you've got the distortion. So you can do something that feels exciting, but maybe isn't the best melodically. So we stripped it back down to the way we'd kind of written when we were first starting out. And that was really a really important first step, as Alex described. And so eventually we had enough material that we played for Neil, and he was excited about it. And we did then get all together in a rehearsal space in Toronto at a studio, and started working together and putting them into full-blown songs. And Neil got his mitts on him finally. And I think it was very hard for Neil to stay on the sidelines for a few weeks, knowing that writing was going on, and that we'd had some of his lyrics, but he wasn't allowed to come over and play with us. But fortunately, he had stuff he had to do anyway. So and that set the good tone. And before you know it, we had brought Nick Raskolinitz into the project, and he was a great partner to help us achieve the vision of sound that we wanted to achieve for this record.
Nick's great. He's worked with a lot of different people, and one of the best things, he's worked with the Foo Fighters and done a great job. Who Foo Fighters? You got two drummers in the band. I know they're fans of Rush's and fans of Neil's. So you know what I mean. It's really cool that it kind of comes full circle, and Neil works with you guys. In the studio, I heard he was really. He didn't mind pushing you guys and kind of going, well, I think you could do that a little better. Or,
no, he was
I got
great.
this idea. Talk about that process with Neil, because I heard obviously you did great work over the years with Terry Brown, and you've always had different co-producers. But tell me about the new experience of working with someone like Nick.
Well, Nick was, if you don't mind me
Go ahead.
what was great about Nick was he had a lot of real ideas, and he had this vision of how he wanted Neil to sound. And he, not only in terms of the way his drums should sound, but the ferocity with which Neil used to play, and has played at various times. And so when they started working together, he was incredibly opinionated. And usually producers pussyfoot a little around Neil. They're not quite sure how to approach him. And that helps. And they work out an arrangement and improve the songs. But Nick is this big, larger-than-life, lovable character, and he was just going to be head first and dive right in. So as soon as Neil started throwing things down, they started getting a rapport, and his ideas were so specific, like, hey man, wouldn't it be awesome if you played blah 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 boosh boosh boosh, and
air drums and air guitar, but that was how he showed it, right?
And Pat would shake his head and go, what did you just say? So, and of course he would look at us and we would laugh, and he's kind of like a cartoon character in some ways. He's got so many ideas, and he's so full of enthusiasm that you can't help but say, well, yeah, sure, I'll try that. And he did that with Neil, he did that with me, he did that with Alex. And they don't always work out, but it creates a fun and energetic atmosphere for trying new things. And that was what he was able to accomplish. That let's try new things idea. It was the concept. And I think he just got some great performances out of all of us.
Welcome back to Sound Off. I'm Matt Pinfield. I'm sitting here with Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson of the band Rush. Let's talk about some of the songs on the new record, Snakes and Arrows. Now, you know, I've read some of the stuff Neil's written about, his lyrics on it, and I love it. I mean, he's so literate. He'll talk about T.S. Eliot and Robert Frost, and he comes from so many different places. We talked about Ayn Rand earlier, but just some of the cool lyrical stuff in there, some of the relationship things. Let's talk about Spindrift, that song right now. I love that track and how that came together. I heard the chorus was changed in the process of recording. Tell me a bit about that song.
Yeah, when we first wrote that song, what are now the choruses were in fact just like small bridges or pre-choruses. And when Nick first came in, one of the major contributions he made was to listen to that song and say, hey guys, you know, that's not a chorus, what you're calling the chorus.
Yeah.
That's really a bridge. And what you're calling the pre-chorus, that's what I hear as the chorus. We looked at each other and went, really?
What do you know?
Yeah, right.
And he said, why don't we try chopping that out and moving and rearranging the song in that fashion? So we did it, and we loved it. And the best thing that it accomplished was it got back to these great verses much faster. And so that's when we knew, okay, here is the producer we've been looking for quite some time.
Yeah.
A guy who is not interested in changing what's great about a song and not interested in making anything simpler, just helping it flow better.
Right.
And helping us achieve maximum rushosity on all our
the
parts.
arrangements, right, and doing it that way. It's great. Yeah. It's very cool that worked out. Now, there's a song on the album called The Larger Bowl. Now, Neil waited 15 years to give you guys the lyrics to that song. That's an incredible story. Tell me about that.
Well, I guess he'd hung on to a bunch of these experiments. They were
Right.
word games, word puzzles, and there's a device called a pantoum.
Right.
And he wrote 4 pantooms. And pantoum is a song, a verse or a poem constructed by the first 4 lines. You have the first 4 lines, and then you take the second line of the first stanza, and that becomes the first line of the second stanza.
Right.
And then you keep doing that. You take then the first line, the second line of that stanza, it becomes the first line of the third stanza. So then you get this kind of repetitive but cycle, but it feels different every time. So we took that idea and we said, well, let's make a kind of a musical pantoum in the way that we'll use those lyrics, but every time you hear that word in a new stanza, that line, you'll hear it with a different melody. And it worked out really in a very, very cool way. And I think he was really pleased that we finally used this idea that was hanging around for quite some time. And honestly, it's one of my favorite songs I think that we've ever written. I think it's a real highlight on the record.
Musically, it's very simple. It's only 4 chords in the whole song. And that's a challenge to do in this band, to try to have a little bit of restraint.
Right, exactly. I mean, think about all the really complex, melodies and.
Yeah, but when you listen to that song, it doesn't sound like just 4 chords,
Yeah.
because so much of it is arpeggiated, and there's so many different layers of melody that are kind of floating around it. That, of course, we made it complex as we could.
Yeah, and it's really cool the way you guys worked that out. Far Cry is the first single off the record, and tell me about that. That was one of the first songs you actually ended up working on too on this record as well.
Far Cry, in the whole scheme of writing, was one of the last songs that we wrote. And it was one of those really special gems that come along every once in a while, like The Pass was, or New World Man. That was another one that was sort of written on the spot, and it just comes together very quickly.
Late in the session, right?
Late in the session, but more importantly, it just happens.
Yeah.
And great lyrics that we got, and Get and I on that day just kind of sat down and started jamming. And it was almost as if we had the song in our head and we just played it, because all the parts came together very, very quickly, and with some arrangement, it was there in front of us.
What was amazing is we had this awesome jam, and it had all these intricate pieces. And I think, Al, you had to leave that day, and I was playing around with the pieces, just listening back and cutting them into shape. And then I came in the morning early to continue doing that, and I found this lyric lying on
that's right, yeah.
on the console, and the lyric was "Far Cry," and you weren't in yet.
Yeah, I remember
And I said, "Wow, these lyrics are really cool." One of the strongest pieces that he'd written for the album at this point. And I started reading the chorus, and I started going, "Wait a second." And I took this piece of music that we had played the day before, and they just fit like that.
Magically.
And I called Neil and I said, "What do you think of an idea like this?" And I sang the chorus to him over that chorus chord, and he said, "Wow, they sounds like you've been working on that for days." And I said, "Oh, this is great." And he left, and by the time you'd come in, I think I had almost the whole song sketched out, because those lyrics kept fitting into every part of the song. It was just like over that 24-hour period, the whole song was meant to be.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I love when
It's a
stuff like
great
that
story.
happens.
Yeah.
And you hear about those magical stories when they happen to bands. You just wonder where it
Well,
comes from.
yeah, you feel like you're not in control. It's just happening on its own, and you're along for the ride.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. Now, We Hold On, which ends the album. I'm going to talk about the instrumentals too, but let's talk about We Hold On, because I love that lyrically, and it brings me back, going back to Fly By Night with In the End and the way that ended the album, and just the feel of In the End and the intensity, and lyrically how that song, what that meant to me as a kid, and then here We Hold On now. Tell me about how that song came about and the writing of that, and how you guys felt working on that.
That was actually the first song that we wrote.
Really?
So it was a little bit of an experiment, being an acoustic approach, and we did have lyrics to work by. I can't remember if...
Yeah, those lyrics were written, and you started playing that fantastic kind of acoustic guitar sequence. And I just grabbed the lyrics and started singing across them and started playing bass. And I think that's one song of lyrics that I didn't touch from the way Neil wrote them. I think maybe I changed one word or something. But yeah, that's another one of those songs that came together very quickly.
Yeah, and the chorus had this little bit of a Middle Eastern influence, and we were getting off on just jamming on that sort of stuff and bouncing along with it.
Yeah.
And that came together a little, not quite as easy as Far Cry, but
pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice that it actually ends the record, the first song that we wrote, and it ends the record.
Yeah, lyrically,
with that sentiment.
Sorry, exactly. Lyrically, it's a nice way to end the album.
Guys, there's two instrumentals on the record too. Let's talk about those. Now, the main Monkey Business, right? That was supposedly the most painstaking song for you guys to write and complete. What was it about the main Monkey Business that was so difficult to work on and finish?
It's an insane song, and the version that you're hearing is the sane version, because the original version of that song
probably twice as complicated as that.
That was an exercise for me in craziness.
Yeah,
and the first. That's an example of what you can do with computer technology. I kept playing with all these parts that we had jammed to, and trying different formations out of them, and seeing if I could make another song, because we needed another song, but we were kind of tired.
Yeah.
So can I make a song up out of all these leftover bits and pieces that we had?
Guys, I want to thank you very much, and tell you we're really excited about the new album, Snakes and Arrows.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's
Nice
really
to talk to you. Nice to meet you.
been a great time hanging with you guys today. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Sound Off tonight. I'm Matt Pinfield with Alex and Getty from Rush. Take care.